Matt Stevens, former UCLA and NFL quarterback, working now as UCLA football's radio analyst, back on the show on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Matt, welcome back to BYU Sports Nation.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I was listening to you guys, and I forget that Provo, Salt Lake City, and that rivalry are so close. It reminds me of UCLA USC. Little hatred going on there.
Oh, a little? My goodness. It's very intense, and so that's a great point that you bring up, and we'll get into the dynamics of what BYU and UCLA have done in the first two games, but I want to go right to something that Jerem and I were talking about in the opening segment, and that is Josh Rosen. My point that I have been trying to make is that when you implement a new offense, even if you're an unbelievably talented quarterback, sometimes it takes time and you have to be patient, which is what I've said to BYU fans with Taysom Hill and what I would say to UCLA fans with Josh Rosen. You can have a great quarterback. Sometimes it just takes a while to find the groove. How do you assess that, Matt?
Oh, I totally agree with you. I mean, because the new offense is more NFL style, coming from a spread zone read, Josh Rosen's under center, and he's never dropped back before, a five-step drop and thrown it out. He's never really done play action, in the long fake. It's something that's really different with tight ends, wing backs, only two wide receiver sets. And then you throw in the fact that he lost Thomas Duarte and Jordan Payton as two leading receivers from last year, so he's got a bunch of new receivers. Josh Rosen hasn't regressed. He just hasn't progressed because of the new offense and new personnel.
If BYU fans only remembered Josh Rosen from the BYU game last year, and that was start 3 for him, they would think he stinks. He was 11 of 23, 106 yards and 3 picks. However, he was really, really good last year, and he's shown pretty well to start this year. Just how good is this kid?
Well, I mean, everyone's sort of criticizing him in the start this season. He's averaging 311 yards passing per game. So, and he had the 3 picks against Texas A&M. A couple of those were in and out of the hands of UCLA wide receivers, deflections that ended up being picks. He's the first pick in the 2018 draft. He would be the first pick in the 2017 draft if he was eligible. I mean, the kid has all the physical tools and arm talent galore, and he's going to be sort of the it factor in this game on Saturday. I mean, he's the guy that can drive the ball downfield. He's the guy that can make accurate throws. And, what I think Josh Rosen's done now is once he feels pressure, sees pressure, he knows how to retreat. He can throw off his back foot. He's much more creative. We're seeing him run the football. He's talking about being efficient, and he's a real cerebral guy. So he's going to be the guy that's going to win the game if UCLA needs to count on someone.
BYU feels like they can put pressure on Josh Rosen like they did last year, albeit this is a different coaching staff and a different defensive front. But they feel like that is the key to beating UCLA, is getting him under pressure. How much better is he at handling pressure now compared to where he was last year?
Well, Kalani Sitake, number one, the head coach, I mean, he's defensive-minded. He likes bringing pressure from the weak side, and it's a numbers game. And that's why UCLA has gone to a more tight-end conventional set. If you have no tight end, you can come from both sides. So it's going to help Josh Rosen recognize where the blitz is coming from. Just a year underneath his belt and getting hit and getting pushed around and, failure. For Josh Rosen, he's a guy that has won a lot in high school. UCLA, they're 1-1 right now. So I think he understands that, the mental part of the game, figuring out blitzes, and the guy can take a hit as well. I think he's better in that aspect than he was a year ago.
This game's really interesting for a lot of reasons, given the 1-point game last year, and it was a fantastic game from both teams. Then this year, both are 1-1. Neither team wants to be 1-2. UCLA certainly doesn't want to be 1-2 going into, Pac-12 play coming up. So, what do you think of this matchup with Cougars and Provo?
Well, by the way, BYU doesn't want to be 1-2 going into Pac-10 play or Pac-12 play. I mean, they're almost in the Pac-12 South. UCLA has Stanford the following week. So, games 3 and 4. This is pivotal for UCLA, and UCLA, because of that loss against Texas A&M, they can't lose another. Going to the playoffs, it's a beauty pageant. I mean, you got to win all your games for UCLA since they had that one loss. So I think it's a pivotal game for both schools. And, I think BYU, has a little bit of an edge because it's in Provo. It's a very loud place. It's a place where you're going to have to deal with crowd noise, and thankfully UCLA has gone to Texas A&M and been in front of 102,000 people. It's going to help them, and they've also defensively had to face spread-type quarterbacks, so I think that's going to help them as well.
Talking with Matt Stevens, UCLA football radio analyst, former NFL and UCLA quarterback on BYU Sports Nation. UCLA, let's face it, ran all over the BYU defense last year, and that was part of the defensive plan that BYU implemented, which is why Josh Rosen struggled, but they had Paul Perkins, who's now in the NFL, and it worked to the advantage of UCLA. Well, now he's gone, but the Bruins have a new running back in Soso Jamabo and a couple of new offensive linemen. What should we expect from the UCLA run game in this year's contest?
Well, they also have a big fullback that weighs 295 pounds, Ayanu Ta'awa. And everybody thinks, all right, he was a nose guard, now he's a fullback, he's just going to run into people. And yes, he does. I mean, he's a collision waiting to happen. But, he's also a guy that has some natural fullback skills. So you're going to see a guy like Soso Jamabo or Ola Run For Me that are 6'2", 6'4", 225 pounds running behind this 295-pound man. And there's going to be some helmets colliding on the field. And UCLA has two NFL tackles that are both 6'9", 6'9.5", 310 pounds, a real tough center, and the guard play is really getting better. That was the question mark on this O-line. UCLA will want to establish the run and set up the play-action pass for Josh Rosen. And they're going to want to find single coverage on the outside, and Josh Rosen has the arm to take advantage of that.
Matt, what do you think of the health of the defensive line for the Bruins, given Eddie Vanderdoes with that strain of his left knee and tore his ACL last year, and a couple other injuries after 2 weeks?
Well, the good news for Bruin fans is Eddie Vanderdoes practiced yesterday, along with Takaris McKinley. Takaris McKinley is a defensive end, 6'4", 260 pounds. He really adds a lot of athleticism and makes the passer have to step up in the pocket, and if you have to step up in the pocket, there's big Eddie V. Eddie V is going about 330 pounds, and he's destined for the NFL as well. So the Bruins need him, and then they also have another guy, Eli Onku, who's just been on a tear the last 5 games. I'm talking about last season as well, where he's averaging 6 or more tackles. So, the defensive front, if they're healthy, can be very good for the Bruins.
Are they healthy, though, I think is the question. How close to 100% are those guys that have been banged up?
Well, defensive linemen, they're never 100%. And Eddie V will give you some type of percentage anywhere between 80 and 90. But they're always going to be beat up. And, the biggest concern is probably Takaris McKinley because he's had a hamstring pull. And those are very hard to overcome. And he's a guy that uses speed off the edge to get after passers. I would say he's probably, around 75-80%. Eddie V, you never know. A 335-pound man, you're going to ask him how healthy he is. He doesn't know. They're just so big. They want to get to, training table. That's their key.
Exactly. If he's well fed, then he's happy. That's for sure. When you look at
exactly
this matchup is interesting because it's a different quarterback. It's not Tanner Mangum from last year. It's now Taysom Hill. And BYU's offense has put up 18 a game through 2, not as high as they want to be. What's the perception, in your opinion, of the BYU offense so far?
Well, it's another spread offense, and it's going to benefit UCLA for the simple fact that 2 teams that they've played have had excellent spread quarterbacks, and Trevor Knight at Texas A&M. And you're going to hear about this guy, Johnny Stanton at UNLV, 6'2", 245 pounds. He was just an absolute baller against the Bruins on Saturday night. So UCLA, they have faced this type of offense, and I think Tanner Mangum last year, lit him up a little bit, and you got to give credit to Taysom Hill for just beating him out because I think Tanner's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and he's going to have his days coming up. But UCLA defensively has faced this type of offense, so they're going to have some type of familiarity.
Who do you think needs this win more, UCLA or BYU?
Well, they both do. Let's just face it. This is an important game for both teams. It's a pivotal game, I think, for the season for both teams. And if you're UCLA, you start the season, you're ranked 16, and you go 1-2, and then your next opponent is Stanford at home. All of a sudden the Pac-12 champion, 4 out of the last 5 years you got to play. That becomes a must-win. Or you could go 1-3. For BYU, they're in the race here in the Pac-12 South. Just kidding. But, they don't want to lose 2 games either because that takes them out of the playoff picture. So, this is a big time game, and it's always been circled on the UCLA schedule that this is a must win on the road.
Follow him at Bruin Color Guy, Matt Stevens. Great to have you back on the show, man. We appreciate the insight, and we look forward to seeing you in Provo.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Can't wait to get there.